Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Kara Schramm. I am a program manager here at the AHA. I work very closely on our AHA team training initiatives, so very happy to bring this webinar to your attention today. Today's webinar is Leadership That Motivates, Keys to Unlocking Team Engagement and Retention. And so before I hand it off to our speaker, we do just have a few introductory slides. So next slide, please. So just a few rules of engagement. You can access your audio today through a few different ways. The first being through your computer speakers or through your phone. You'll see with your microphone button on the bottom left-hand side of your screen that you can switch between the two. So please keep that in mind. We will also be holding a Q&A session towards the end of the presentation, so please submit any questions that you have for our speaker through the chat area. A few other notes for Zoom that the session is being recorded. The chat will not be included in the recording, and please feel free to use the chat throughout the webinar. You can chat everyone using the picture on the screen as a reference there. You can also chat us individually if you'd like as well. Next slide, please. Apologies, everyone. We're having just a small technical difficulty today.
It is not advancing. Yeah. Okay.
Jan, don't mind, just stop sharing your screen and we can go ahead and reshare. And
there we go.
Sorry,
everybody. I'm sure you've experienced this. There we go. We'll just redo. All righty. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So we do offer continuing education credit for our webinars. And so there are a few things that you'll need to do in order to claim your CE credit today. You'll need to create a Duke OneLink account. You only need to do this one time, and you can use it for all future webinars. I will place the instructions in the chat here momentarily, but you'll need to register for the account and then activate your account by confirming your mobile phone number. And so after the webinar today, all you need to do is text the code that you see on the screen. It's GAXDET to the phone number that you see, and you'll have 24 hours to do that. And again, CEs will open for claiming after the webinar ends today. And then next slide, please. Perfect. So we do have a few upcoming team training events just to call out. In terms of our courses and workshops, we do have one Team Steps Master Training course still open, coming up here very quickly, June 21st and 22nd at Metro Health in Cleveland. If you're interested in that, please go ahead and sign up. All the links are clickable today. If you're interested in a more custom approach, we do offer some advisory services for Team Steps at your organization. If you'd like to learn more about the different ways that we can help you, feel free to click the Learn More link on your screen. And then we also have one webinar coming up on June 28th, and this will be sponsored by Relias. They will be talking about nurse onboarding and professional development, assessing and addressing DE&I. All right. Well, I'm excited to hand it over to our speaker today, Jan Brouwer. Jan is the co-founder of Creating Team Solutions, and she has a really great presentation today all about teams and leadership. So Jan, take it over.
All righty. Welcome, everybody. I am, my hopes and dreams for this webinar is that we would share knowledge around the country. So what I believe as a nurse and as an instructor is that the shared knowledge in the room, the wealth in the room is really so much more than I hold. I'll just bring it forward. So first of all, I'd love it if you opened your chat box, because I'm going to be watching the chat box. And Kara and Rhonda will pop on as well and watch the chat box with us. But could you sign in the chat box about where you're signing in from? I did see the registration, and we're from all over the country. So if you could put in your location into the chat, Missouri, New Mexico, oh my gosh, Texas, Iowa, Ohio. Okay, so Oregon, woo, go Oregon. I am from Oregon, and I live close to this picture that you see on my photo here. It's just about 30 minutes from my house. That's Mount Hood. So thank you for signing in. That's awesome. We're going to do an interactive time today. I'm going to ask you quite a few questions. I'll do a poll that I'm really interested to hear what you're doing. I consider you experts and what you're doing. What we're going to be talking today about is something I'm really passionate about. I'm really passionate about getting engagement. I know we've used that term a lot, but I really want everybody on the team to play. I'm really passionate about that. And some ways that leaders can get everybody back and playing on the team at their best. We know teams work best when we have activated every member on the team at the highest that they can go. So let's get started. I titled this Leadership That Motivates. And really I'm passionate about leadership. I just love leaders. I so appreciate what you do. And what I wanted to look at today is some things that you don't have to wait for an initiative. They're actually things that abide in yourself. It's really up to activating yourself so that you can motivate your team to re-engage. And we know that when people are playing on the team, they stay. I would say that's true for volleyball, baseball, quilting teams, or any kind of place where you can grab people's attention and put them into places where they feel good about their contributions. Then people stay in those things. So let's get started. So I put a poll in here. Kara's going to put up a poll for us, but I'd love for you to vote in. I'm really interested about where are you? Is your team, or maybe personally too, I guess, surviving? And that's where everybody's going kind of which way, or the leader wants to go a certain way, and the team is like, no, not going with you. Are you surviving? That would be scored a 1. Or are you thriving? So everybody take a minute to put in your vote about surviving or thriving, or where are you on the scale? Really interested in this because that will help inform what are we going to focus in on today. So it'll take a few minutes to put that in. So I love this idea about start where you are. Like I've been a nurse, gosh, just true confessions. I graduated 40 years ago, which is amazing to me, but I've been a nurse a very, very long time. And what I know is that surviving and thriving isn't just a static thing. I've been on teams where we are thriving and then we kind of, drop down, and then we're not thriving. We're back into survival. It could be a change of leader. It could be a change of procedure. It could be sometimes a new hire will take the team out, or sometimes somebody who won't retire will take the team out. So it looks like the poll's up, and it looks like we have people are kind of like, I'm doing okay. I'm not surviving. 8% are surviving, and 4% are thriving. So yay for the 4%. I hope you really contribute in the chat box today, because I really value that. That is, I see somebody who graduated 45 years ago. Woo, you're awesome. All right, so let's keep going along this idea of surviving and thriving. But wherever your team is, make sure you start. We do this with our patients. Start where you are, not where you want to be. like, I wish I was thriving. No, go ahead and start where you actually are, so you apply the right tools at the right time. If you're surviving or in a toxic place as a team, make sure that you start there and address what you need. So, all righty. There we go. Okay, so I defined thriving is really getting your team on the same page, and it takes intentionality. And let's all be realistic, it is not driven by a care initiative. It's not driven by pizza parties. It's not driven, thriving is not driven by, oh, a great new idea that comes from the top. Thriving is really a frontline team dynamic that you can be thriving in quite a difficult environment, but it's really an internal driven thing. So thriving is really driven by engagement, the team's potential, really maximizing that. And so it's getting the team to lead the initiatives themselves. So it doesn't come from the initiative, it comes from the team's engagement and catching the fire and pulling that initiative forward in a way that makes sense to them. And we'll talk a bit about how to coach that into being. So this is my family. I love my family. That's my mom on in the black and white photo. Look at the meds that she's mixing, like in the 1950s. My mom's expertise was in visiting nurses, home health, and what motivated her team as the Greatest Generation was this altruistic idea about I'll work 12 hours, I'll work night shift, I'll work on behalf of the altruistic idea. So there's a picture of me at my careers in labor and delivery, and then I moved to education. What motivates me is achievement. The boomers are being recognized by the organization or by my boss is really important to the boomers. And then we have my daughter who's a millennial. So we skip the X's and we'll talk about the millennials. They are by far the biggest numerical number in our workforce now. And I've done a lot of conversations with my daughter, Kelsey. She's a DNP that works in a hospital as a hospitalist, about what motivates them. And then, of course, the Zs, the Gen Zs that are 26 and younger that are just entering into our workforce. What motivates them is this ability to not live to work, but work to live. I said that backwards. So they are not motivated about working to live, which would be like my mother and I. They are motivated by living in work enhancement and that professional pride. The millennials, and this will really, I'll come back to it again, because if we miss this moment, here's just a little nugget. The millennials are ready to leave. They are ready to leave. And we have Xers who are now the experts in the field, and the boomers who are still there, not making room for the wisdom that is coming up through the millennial. Yeah, Mary says, I love that your daughter has a photo of herself for patients to see behind the mask. She actually, being a COVID frontline person in Seattle, she was so covered most of her day. She printed up this thing. She works internal medicine, so she printed up this thing so everybody could read it. Pretty clever, I thought. So we're going to talk today about something that isn't rocket science. There's a lot of science behind it, but some of these things are simply a reminder about the importance of you as a leader. So we're going to talk today about 3 keys to unlocking your team. The first one is connection. Really, this personal connection has a lot of untapped power. As you've gotten sucked away from your team by your task list, by your meeting schedule, by your own personal needs to just hide for a little bit, those are certainly legit. that connection piece is something you can control, and it's actually what's motivating the team, and it's an easy thing to tap into. So I believe in leading through curiosity. Lifelong learners are curious. They keep a sense of wonder. I admire leaders with curiosity and a sense of wonder. And we're going to talk about that skill and leveraging it into the team. And the last thing I want to talk about, often an untapped resource, is this idea about celebration. So let's get started here with this idea about connection. So this power of your presence. One of the things I've been thinking about is this idea about being present in the present. I am a strategic planner. I love a 5-year plan. I love to think about the whole week. I love to, and I've been training myself as a leader to sit in the moment with the person I'm sitting with. Is there anybody out there that is struggling with that too? Is like, just raise your hand, right? Because this whole idea about how do I stay in this moment with the person talking to me when I have my phone is beeping off, my emails are stacking up? How do I not miss this moment? It's a personal leadership skill I'm working on. I'm not great at it, but don't underestimate the power of you. So I'd love for you to put in the chat box. Can you name a leader that noticed you? That picked you out of a crowd and that greeted you? I'll tell 2 stories while you throw the names of those people in the chat box. Is that I had a charge nurse, my very first job. I worked labor and delivery at a tertiary care center. And my evening shift charge nurse saw me and lifted me up. And it was simply by being near her that I grew. It was being noticed by her that I felt important. I was empowered. I got engaged. I followed what she did. I was really motivated by connecting with Marilyn. I was motivated by connecting with her. Like when she noticed, I worked harder. When she knew my name, I just worked more diligently. This incredible power of presence is really an underestimated power that you hold in yourself. You don't have to wait for an initiative. It's actually you. But to bring this connection, you have to bring your mind into the present. It's the power of your presence with the people, but it's also the power of you yourself being present in the moment. I like what people are saying is that some people's leaders have begun to work remotely. And so you hardly see your leader. Or think about, like, if you're a top tier leader, if you're a director, a CNO, like, how are you connecting with your people? I think you really need to think about that. And then what tools are you bringing your mind into the present? So one of the things I did in COVID, kind of an old story now, but thank goodness, right, is that I chose to walk around our facility and sit down. And so I want to talk about the power of that and how it was by being present that I was able to get people engaged and into the moment, the information. So connecting with a multi-generational workforce, we need to recognize the needs of the multi-generational out there. So we're talking now about, so the boomers, we're going to set them aside. They're everybody 58 and up. But let's talk about the X, and the biggest workforce right now is the millennial. Every employee needs to be known. And it's never more true than the millennial and the Gen Z, who are our new hires. They need to be known. It's not optional that you don't know who's on your team. In fact, a great brief for any critical event or any surgical case is introducing yourselves around the circle, because the need to be known and the need to know what you are contributing with, that's really, really a critical piece. So this whole connection begins with knowing their name, their dog, or what they're doing for vacation. They also need to be heard. So this idea about monologue versus dialogue, when we did in the 50s, it was normalized to do a hierarchical culture in healthcare that my mom experienced, like the expert said, so therefore we did. That's no longer acceptable, and we swung our pendulum back in COVID, because we went down to direct. We have an emergency, and then we did a direct line. I can probably say with quite a bit of confidence that we don't have the voice heard in the front line yet. Can you put in the chat box if you feel like you've restored the voice of the front line? So just say yes or no. Yes, the front line voice is being heard. Oh, I love that. Look at all the yes, no. Yeah, look at that. I should have done a poll. Oh, look at that. You guys look at the chat box right now. Thank you for blowing that up. Sometimes, most of the time, yes, no. Working to be intentional. Negative. Yeah. This whole piece, you guys, it takes intentionality to get the dialogue back. Because since we said, wait, it's top down, we have lost the ability to ask people to speak up and to hear them well. And then the need to understand the why. Again, back to the millennial, I will not do it unless I understand why. Why am I changing my workflow, my work practice, unless I know the why? So I've been thinking about the most powerful tool that sometimes we don't use is this leader rounding. So think about what's your routine for rounding with the staff. And when I mean routine, I really mean it, because as a staff member, you sometimes you have one and done. The leader will say, oh yeah, I'll round on, I'm rounding. And just like a good diet, it lasts for 10 minutes, right? Whatever the 10 minutes. Oh yeah, look, lack of psychological safety prevents teammates from speaking up. Okay, to restore psychological safety means that you have to be present and not afraid to hear some scary stuff, right? So it has to be routine. If it's not routine, don't start it. This leader rounding that I'm describing is so untapped. It's simply sitting down with the staff. So in COVID, I chose to round on every staff every week on every department. I just made myself at home in the lab, sterile processing, they're a hoot back there. Nursing, of course, that's my first love. We have senior housing, we have senior assisted living. I drove in my car over there, sat down with them. The power of sitting down was so amazing. And it took several weeks of me showing up on a regular basis so that people would believe that I really wanted to hear them. I talked to leaders about this idea about why don't you round? And the leaders say to me, and I think it's so true, we're afraid of what we might hear. We're going to get blasted. Well, it's the regularity of coming back every week. You might get blasted the first couple, 3 weeks, but it's the regularity of coming back and sitting down and being willing to hear that people will begin to bring their issues before they build up resentment and blast you. So you'll just be getting it closer. So I love what Jody's saying in the chat box. It's important to act and close the loop once they do speak up. Like they need this quick win. We'll talk about that, Jody, in Celebrate, but she's got it exactly. So don't yes, go and be present, but take a little notebook there so that you can quick follow the loop, make a little priorities thing, or maybe you can close the loop right that day or right where you're sitting them. Next generation, Nancy is saying, is that follow up and let them know how their things were fixed. Oh yeah, Nancy carries a book with me every day as she rounds. I love that. This second thing is I really want to challenge us as leaders. I looked on who was signed up here. You guys are key leaders. How often are you rounding with your night shift? Now you need to recognize our night shift are most likely Gen Z. And what the research shows is they need continual touch points. So when we look at Gen Z, think about your own self. I worked night shift first 4 years of my career. When we don't see our leaders, I'm not going to follow them. So they have got to actually see you, to visit you, like get up at 5 and show up for their change of shift or whenever you guys change shift. This whole idea arriving, Jennifer says she arrives 30 minutes before shift change 3 times a week. Oh my gosh, Jennifer, I just want to give you a free Snickers bar. Monthly rounding 1-to-1. This whole piece about what anxiety is, research shows 40% of our Gen Zs have significant anxiety. 40%, meaning they need reassurance on such a frequent basis. They need actually to see you. And then how do you use, what do you use? I'm really interested. This is where the brilliance of the whole nation can like jump in there. What do you use to communicate with your staff? And I don't consider email counting. So you do want to do the email to catch the people who are on vacation, that kind of thing. So because it'll stay in their email. Oh, look at Melissa. We do a coffee cart. Oh my gosh, Melissa, I love that so much. Instant messaging, again, that's really, you need to speak the language your employees hear. Being present, instant messaging, coffee cart, in-person huddles, weekly huddles, Zoom with our remote team. You guys, email, no Gen Z opens their email. So do put it out so you can say to your team, I emailed this out on this day. Do email it out because it'll live in there. But this frequent conversation is where we need to go as leaders. So thank you so much. You guys have brilliant ideas. Oh, lightning rounds. Look at that. You guys keep putting your ideas in there. And honestly, Rhonda, what is it that you say at the AHA about copying? Like shameless copying. I love
yes. We say that our motto at the AHA is to give generously and steal shamelessly.
I love that. That's what this webinar is about, you guys. Put it in the chat box so people can run the chat box and just go ahead and jot down some fresh ideas, because you as leaders are doing the best you can. I give you full credit for that, but let's freshen it up in 2023. Let's keep going here. The power of your presence. This is really your goal, and this will translate into retention, engagement, all the things that we care about numerically. The goal is to say, I see you and the value, the work you do. I asked my daughter, I said, what would it take, Kelsey, to stay engaged in your work? And she goes, I want them to see me and I want them to say thank you on a regular basis. Okay. The power of your presence, I must say, it's regular. And again, sometimes leaders are tempted to take an agenda out and say, this is the thing coming down. No. The rounding, the power of your presence is this more like 5 minutes on every team on a regular basis where you sit down, you have no agenda, and you just sit down and you ask how people are doing, and you ask, is there anything I can do for you today? That's where you'll be able to see the pulse of the front line. That's where you'll be able to do the quick fixes. Let's go back to this. in COVID, I sat down, I had a team that was a non-adopter, late adopter, frustrated team. It took me probably about 6 weeks before someone said, "Why are you coming?" And I said, "Oh, just want to check on you." And then began the dialogue. But it took quite a long time for that team to trust me, that I didn't have an agenda, that I was there for them, that I wanted to hear what they had to do. And if I could solve it, I would, or I'd push it up chain. I was just gathering information, pushing up chain. I'd get back to them, that kind of thing. But it took them probably 6 weeks to actually have an honest dialogue with me. They were very suspicious of me. Okay, so let's do number 2. So that's the power of your presence. That's really about connection. Let's turn to curiosity. And there's really 2 things that I want to talk about in curiosity. One is, again, this generational learning. No longer your boomers and some Gen X will go, okay, that's what I understand, I will execute that. But we need to switch up how we're leading the bulk of our workforce so that we can begin to ask the right questions. So there's really 2 things we're going to be covering here. Is we're going to be looking at using questions and coaching, not telling. So gone are the days where I say and you do, unless it's a code. I mean, let's be honest, unless it's an emergency, bring about this developing curiosity within your leadership style. It's the thing that motivates who is in our workforce. Really learn to ask the right questions. And if you learn this also works for your family, that kind of thing. Look at, Cynthia says, we use a tool called Stand Out, which is, again, there's some electronic tools out. Blow up the chat box, you guys. The electronic tools you're looking about are the right questions that we're using here, and coaching, not telling. Okay, so let me say that again. If you don't hear anything, gone are the days that you tell, unless it's an emergency, of course. But we need to turn to coaching. Ask a better question, and it takes longer, but it sticks. So let's talk about this leadership skill of coaching through curiosity. So what techniques do coaches, think about baseball coach, healthcare coach, leadership coach. Maybe you guys have had that wonderful leadership training coach. What kinds of questions do they ask you to motivate you? What do coaches do? Let's do a baseball coach, or you can say in this photo, we've got an expert teaching someone who's learning. What kind of questions do you ask, right? It's similar to what we ask our patients. How do you best learn? Do you read? Do you tell? In labor and delivery, I would say, do you prefer a quiet? Do you prefer instruction, or I'd watch for it? How do they get information about, oh yeah, here's a good one Tracy's putting in there. What is important to you? What would make you feel successful out of our conversation today? That's a good, curious question. This leadership skill of saying, I know the answer, but let me guide you to thinking about it differently, is through questions. It takes longer. So say you're doing an initiative about, let's do hand washing. Everybody needs to wash their hands more. To say, so what are your current patterns? Where do you feel like, what happens when you forget? Or what are the environments that, environmental barriers? These are all questions. Instead of saying, wash your hands, which we should all do, ask some better questions so they begin to think about the initiative and solve it themselves within themselves, and then they will actually do it. So this curious question, you could ask it about their professional, empowerment. There, Karima says empowerment. It's exactly right. It's saying, you're the expert. Let's get you to weigh in on what the things are all about. Oh, look, Cynthia, what do you want me to change to express my gratitude to you? I would even polish that up, because you're the leader, to say, what is meaningful gratitude to you? So just have them describe it, not ask them to change you as a leader, but just to ask. And then, you know, you can either do it or not. Because if they say, oh, I wish you'd sing to me, and you don't sing, you know, it's a thing. So this whole piece about curious leader, we watch like basketball coaches, they stand on the sidelines and then they give suggestions because they can see from the outside. But again, if you don't hear anything from this little section on curiosity, ask, don't tell. Ask a better question. Don't tell them what to do. So unless it's an emergency, unless it needs to happen right now, unless it needs to happen tomorrow, I get that. So aside from that, it's all a process, and you're creating psychological safety so you can make a learning environment so people get hungry to learn. Isn't that awesome? I love that so much. I'm working on that in my communication even every day. I'm like, what's a better question I can ask? Okay, so this whole piece about coaching and asking a better questions, right? Questions and coaching. That's what this engagement tool is all about. It's really about taking the ball and asking for engagement. Are you interested? Hey, are you interested in teaming with me to roll out sepsis? And then putting the ball in their court. Now, what were you guys doing at, so our millennials run from 27 to, I think it's 46 is the bucket. So let's take the midline. At 35, what were you doing? What kind of leading were you doing? Could you put that in the chat box? What leading were you doing at 36? And then I want to challenge you that we're not giving our mid-30s, our 40-year-olds enough invitation where they're in control. Right, your middle manager, charge unit, manage a unit. This whole thing is actually true. Are we assistant director? Oh my gosh, you're like, wow. Okay, VP. Oh my gosh, you guys. High performers on this call. This whole piece, you guys, I don't think our 35-year-olds are getting this opportunity to lead in a manner that is them. It's this invitation. Are you interested? And it's putting the ball in their court, and it takes it off you. It makes your job easier, you know, in a way, right? So it's putting the ball in their court. You guys look at the chat box. You guys are amazing. Okay. These are the kinds of questions that I ask. So how would you do it? So let's pretend we're rolling out sepsis, or let's talk about the thing we're all doing, fall risk in clinics, in senior care facilities, in hospitals, right? It's always like, how would you roll out a fresh initiative on falls? What would you do? What seems interesting to you? They will think of more clever things than you could even. They'll say, oh yeah, you know, I'd make posters, I'd put balloons on it, I'd put things on the top. They all know. So what would it take to get your team on board? I think that's a great ask for the team itself. What would it take to get your team on board? Your day shift, your night shift, because each culture, right? Your lab, your draw station versus the clinic lab are a different answer for engagement in a lab team, right? Your procedural staff versus your front office staff are completely different. So they need to apply whatever you're rolling out, false initiatives, in their culture. Ask them. They actually know where to poster it, what to say, how to approach, how to reward it. Ask them what timeline seems reasonable. This whole piece is like saying, well, you create it, and then you hold yourself to accountable to I like Yvonne says, I never asked my staff to do anything I haven't done. Well, just do it with them, because the idea is to say, I'm exploring this. It's best explored in a team. Can we do this together? Because I'd like to learn from you. And then I have the leadership piece and I need to experience it myself. Like partner, those of us who have been in leaders for quite a long time, we should never do anything alone. We should always have a partner, because we're learning from them and they're learning from us in this way that they can advance it in the culture that they can hear it, right? It's pretty powerful. What role would you like to play. Millennials and Z's will be like, me, do I have to do anything? You're like, yeah, what do you want to do? So persist on that one. What support and supplies do you need to be successful? How often do you want us to have a conversation? I need pens, I need sticky notes, whatever. Kareem is right. Empower them and help them be responsible and accountable, but stand with them. If it's a new skill for you or a new skill for them, stand really close to that piece. Again, summary slide for this curiosity piece. Are you interested is such a powerful thing. Involvement equals I belong, and that's a generational hook for millennials, well, for all of us as humans, for sure. Some things I like to be invited, but I don't want to actually go. I just want to belong. I just want the just want the invite. I belong is a really powerful team builder. It really statistically moves retention needle, and you're releasing the power within the team. So you take the burden off your shoulders and you have a shared burden at the beginning of the project, and eventually they'll be able to pull the project forward themselves for their team. It does require, this is the sticking point for you guys as experienced leaders, it takes opening up your hand and flexibility on the how you get things done. So maybe your timeline isn't flexible, but the how. And I put this slide, this photo up because once you have critical mass joining a project, people will join. That is group dynamic, right? You have to have a critical mass that does stuff, and then others will join. Okay, so let's go on to this last concept, and it's celebration. Small wins lead to sustained wins. Now, if you take this into something, I hope you've struggled. Well, I shouldn't say it that way, but I'm assuming that most people on this call have struggled with their weight loss journey, like I have in my life. Is that I can't say, oh, I'm going to lose 150 pounds or something like that. I have to say I'm going to lose 5, and then I celebrate it. Like, or say I have a vacation coming. I don't say, oh, I have 50 days till my vacation. I say, oh, 1 less week. I give myself small wins. And on our teams, most of what our teammates would say, our millennials and our Gen Zs, is they actually need frequent small wins. They need frequent feedback, right? They need in real time. Our Gen Zs need actually in real time feedback, like the power of mentoring, which well, we're not going to cover here, but I'm curious about, like, why do we wait to celebrate? Why do we wait till the annual review? Why do we wait until the project is finished? Like until you've lost the 150 pounds, and until the fall stats go all the way to 0, which they never will, right? What I think about as leading, especially the next gen, is to elevate the work the front line does. It cultivates participation and engagement as you lead and creates this recognition culture. I want to really bring back the high five, like in whatever's meaningful culturally to your unit, to your division. What's the high five look like? What's the quick win? Nice job, team. Could you put in the chat box about where do you do the quick wins? Debrief is great. In fact, like at the end of the shift, you could say, how did the shift go on a scale of 1 to 5, right? That's the fist of 5. You could say, oh, today was a 1, today was a 5. If today was a 1 and we survived, I'm thinking, wow, that's a win. Where's the really quick win? It could be at the end of a procedure, at the end, what went well should be a frequent. What went well today? That's how you should end the shift for every employee. What went well today? What did you feel proud of? Any great catches, huddles, real-time shout outs. Okay, so what do you use long-term to sustain this idea? What do you guys do as far as long-term to make your team famous? Let's do this one a little bit longer. What do you guys do? Put in the chat box. Like, do you have a board on the unit? Do you do kudos? Do you do a newsletter so everybody in the facility can know what night shift did? And getting their their code card up to speed. Like how do you make people famous to everyone else on the team, night shift, day shift, and throughout the facility, right? When I see these things, quarterly awards with plaques, woo, quick, good catch. You guys blow that thing up. Just realize you have got to increase the frequency. You've got to figure out a way to celebrate the smaller wins, like shout out boards. I love that. Positive patient comments, those should go to everyone. Caregiver of the month. Yeah, this is exactly what should happen. It doesn't cost much, but it will really change your retention. Now, I can hear you through the airwaves. I don't have time. You don't have time not to do this. If you don't celebrate the small wins, your workforce is going to go out the door. It's super hard to do, to be mindful when your own task list is so big. So that's why I find somebody on the team that loves this stuff, and I ask them to partner with me. I particularly don't have this skill to add balloons, that kind of idea, or send out those cards. I need a partner in that. It needs to be my voice, but I need a partner to help me execute that. So just a thought about, don't do this by yourself either. It's just too much, right? Look at this quote I found in the Gallup poll. Gallup.com has some interesting articles on this, but look at this quote, the science matching what feels good. When recognition hits the mark, employees are 5 times as likely to be connected, right, to a company culture, and 4 times as likely to be engaged. Now, some of you are working with a lot of travelers. If you do this well, your travelers will actually move there. That was my experience on my unit when we had a lot of travelers because we were staffed down for so long. They liked our culture so much, they moved. They came, they commuted. It's pretty remarkable. Okay, let's keep going. Celebration. So we've covered a lot of this in the chat box, but if you still want to chime in, I'd really appreciate your feedback on this. Is that how often do you provide feedback? Let me remind you, Gen Zs, 26 and younger, which are most likely night shift, need it almost every day, minimum 3 times a week. So you got to build it into their onboarding, build it into their charge staff, build it in because they are anxious and they feel like they don't have enough knowledge. What I hear from the Gen Zs is, I don't know what I'm doing. Am I okay? I think that's a human factor, but it really is hitting our anxious staff to make sure that they are rewarded and responded to right away. So what do you do to elevate the front line, make them famous? We've talked about that. What tools do you utilize to celebrate? And we've done a good job at talking about that in the chat box. Thank you. Look at this great quote. I really like Simon Sinek is an interesting leader to follow, but this is what he reminds us all of. He says, no matter, you matter to your team as you focus on the who, things can shift. Leadership is not about being in charge. Okay, so that top-down leadership, that's got to die. It's nobody responds to it anymore. Leadership is about taking care of those in your charge. It's really putting the who in healthcare. It's putting the care back in healthcare. As leaders, we know how to do it as professional staff, like as a nurse, you know how to care with patient-centered caring. Now, this generation is requiring that we care for them like we would. Look at Karima's comment in the chat box. Be a king maker, not the king. Oh my gosh, yeah. This whole piece about let's be mindful that we are caring for our staff now like we would care for patients. We talk to them in the way that they can hear us. We get feedback. The younger they are, the more frequent the feedback needs to be, just a rule of thumb. And the power of who you are. Oh, well, look at that. Okay, there we go. Okay, leadership that motivates. Okay, curiosity, connection, curiosity, celebration. What's your aha from today? Put in the chat box. What's your aha? And then we'll break out to, we have just a few minutes left for questions, but what's your aha? What's your take home from today? What did you learn? What are you going to apply? I'm very curious about what are you going to take from this and apply it today, because all these three things are just a quick reminder of what we know really works. Yeah, anxiety and the need. I love ask a better question, curiosity question, not telling about coaching. Yes, more frequent check-ins, more praise, promoting questions. Yeah, small daily changes. You guys got it. You guys, that's so valuable. You guys, do you realize the people on this call, if we applied these concepts today, you could change your culture. I'm really excited about that. So, Kara, or Rhonda, why don't you take us from here?
It's actually going to be me. Hi,
Okay.
Jan.
I love Jan.
This is a real life example of some task assistance.
I love that.
Team. Thank you so much for presenting today. You did a fantastic job, and I appreciate all of the insights and support from the chat, and the idea generation was awesome. I got a lot out of it as well. Feel free to chat in some questions, but we will only be able to get to a couple. But one that I wanted to ask is that someone chatted in is, when you hear staff saying they need more staff, what curiosity question can you ask?
Oh, such a great thing, because that's the felt need right now. And sometimes as a leader, you can't meet the need, and that's just painful. Because we've worked, I worked rural hospital. Like there's only 15 people in town and like we've all worked. Like who else we're gonna get, that whole piece about, you could say, so what specifically do you need help with? Sometimes it's answering the telephone so you can stay with the patient. Sometimes it's some other need that you can meet. I had a leader one time who was the CEO, and he would walk through every day before he went home, and we were blowing up on my unit, and he goes, what do you need? And I said, dinner. And he ordered pizzas, and they showed up. That's all we needed. He had no nursing skill to give us. So ask specifically, what do you need? And they say, just more help. You could say specifically, is it phones? Is it handling the families? Is it passing out the meal? Like, what specifically can I bring to leverage, or me personally do for you right now? That's what you, and then long-term, giving them feedback about, I have a job posted, we've got a traveler request out, like give them real time, like help is coming, I'm working on it, I didn't forget. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes when we ask, what do you need? That can be such a broad question, right? So saying, I have an hour, or I have 5 minutes, what can I do for you? If it's in the moment too, is a great strategy as well.
Right. And the power of you being there, hearing it, makes people feel better as they're working really hard, and being thankful in the moment. Thank you for working so hard.
Right. And I also think doing I think you referred to them as what, leadership rounds, or
leader rounds with no agenda.
Right. I think that alone can really help increase that level of psychological safety, and asking for people's feedback, so that when they're really pressed up against time, or in a pinch, they will feel more comfortable and empowered to request that assistance and speak up.
Yeah, exactly. I really got to thank the people who chimed in. I really so value your voice about the good things you're doing nationally. Like, thank you. Kind of makes me touched a little bit. Thank you for doing the hard work. Let me be the leader that thanks you, because you are working as hard as you can with not enough staff. And I get it. I really understand that. And I want to thank you for doing your best. Really.
Yeah.
Thank you for being out there for all of our patients, anyway.
Exactly. And there's a ton of ideas floating around. So even if someone can just take one idea that they took away from your presentation, or others' feedback in the chat, that's a win.
It's a win. It's a win.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, we're up at the hour here. So if you wouldn't mind, Jan, just flipping to the next slide, just so I can hit some of these final reminders. Again, I just want to really thank you for a fantastic webinar today. It was phenomenal. Obviously got some great feedback in the chat here. So just a reminder for everyone, once we close out today's webinar, please note that an evaluation will appear on your screen. So we really value your feedback. So if you wouldn't mind and taking literally 2 or 3 minutes to fill that out, we would really appreciate it. The continuing education information is here. So please text the code you see to that phone number within the next 24 hours in order to claim your CE credit. And we'll be sending a follow-up email with the recording. So if others want to rewatch it or share with others, that will be available to you. So Jan, thank you so much for your time. That was such a fantastic presentation. And I appreciate everyone for being on this webinar today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you guys.